Hey guys, Brad Gilmore here. Want to give a big shout out to our title sponsor, Walker Texas Lawyer. If you or a loved one have been injured in an accident, whether that be a car, truck, motorcycle accident, or some kind of other issue, hit up Walker Texas Lawyer at 713-552-1117 or walkertexaslawyer.com.
Oh, Brad, what have you done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Matthew McConaughey.
Brad Gilmore.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how are we doing?
I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leno joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Chris Tucker is in the building. Chris Tucker, good morning to you.
Hey, Brad. Good morning to you. How are you?
Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias.
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What lucky to talk to me, funny lad.
Grammy Award winner Maya joins us.
How are you?
And more. This is The Collection. Now your host, The Boat, Brad Gilmore.
And he's joining us right now on the show. We can't believe we have the motorist himself joining us, Mr. Jeffrey Kramer. Jeffrey, how you doing?
I'm good. The motorist. If you blink in Clue, you'd miss me.
No, not us. Not us. You know, we are
because you guys know it minute by minute. I get it.
Yes, we have theory upon theory about the motorist character. Maybe more thought than even Jonathan Lynn probably put into it. But we'll ask you about that in a little bit. I don't think we ever came up with a name for the motorist, but
we've come up with a lot. We've definitely come up with
a lot of backstory.
What you guys put up there with that, who is this man? And it was brilliant. I just loved it. It was fabulous. My kids loved it. It was awesome.
That's awesome. Goodness. That's awesome to hear. But first off, let's pleasantries. Let's get into it. How have things been in the world of Jeffrey Kramer as of late?
They're pretty good. I've been visiting kids and my granddaughter in the UK. And for the month of December, of course, when I came home, the planes are like Petri dishes, and I was coughing for 6 weeks. But I had a great time, and 2 of my 3 sons live in the UK, and my middle son just became a doctor and going to specialize in Tourette and neurological disorders, because 2 of my sons and I have Tourette syndrome. And I'm on the national board. We did it on all of our shows. We did it on Chicago Hope. We did an Ally McBeal. We did it on The Practice, and made a big difference, I think.
Oh, that's incredible. Now, before we were rolling...
Now, if I could just get Billie Eilish to come out and do some stuff for us, it would be great.
Well, hey, you know what? I'm sure she listens to the Minute by Minute podcast, so...
Believe me, everyone does.
They will this one.
They definitely will be tuning into this one. Now,
I know. No, with me, both people who hear it will become dressed as empty seats, I'm afraid.
No, that is not going to be the case. But let me ask you this. Before we started rolling, you made mention of the other Jeff, Mr. Jeff Smith's hat. And then you said you had a great story about your hat. I would love to start off with this great story.
Okay, I'm wearing my Amity police hat, and I'm coming down the hill from where I lived a few years ago, and I happened to go a little past the stop sign. And the cop pulls me over. He goes, you went past that stop sign. I said, yeah, but just a little bit. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. He said, why are you wearing that hat? I said, well, I played the deputy in Jaws. He goes, oh, I love that movie. Don't do it again. And so now I wear it all the time.
Hey, if it got you out of a ticket, man, it's worth wearing.
Yeah, man. And it's a moving violation, so it was good.
Jeff?
Yeah, well, I unfortunately Mr. Kramer noticed that I'm wearing a Boston Red Sox.
I like the Red
hat.
Sox. It's good.
Well, I'll tell you. So I just moved back to California. I lived in Massachusetts since we talked. Mr. Kramer was nice enough to be a part of the Clue documentary that I was fortunate enough to make. Haven't seen him in a few years. Since then, I lived in Massachusetts, and one of the first things I did when I got there was head to Martha's Vineyard and take the little tour that they have. I'm sure there's many tours, but basically walked the streets of Amity Island and, saw where you were accused of having bad printing and said the famous, "We had a shark attack."
Yeah.
So, and I got a little bit of bragging rights to say, "Oh yeah, I know that guy. I know.
I have a home on the vineyard. I go every year. My mother was born on the vineyard. My family started the grocery store, Kronig's, and my cousins still run the real estate. My cousin Peter runs it. And it is this sacred spot of land in the middle of the Atlantic there. It's perfect. It is our sacred space. My family.
Were you living there when you did?
Never year. But my mom did. My mom was born there, went to school there.
Wow.
My grandfather sold land up in Aquina. Used to be called Gay Head. There were Gay Head Indians there. And he used to sell land there in the 1920s for $2 an acre, and no one wanted it because it's too far away from the main towns. I mean, it was crazy. Now, a key to a beach there cost probably $250,000.
Hey, real estate.
Interesting because I know that a lot of the cast in Jaws were locals, but you were not a local hire.
No, I was from New York. I was living in New York. I was an actor by then.
Yeah.
But I flew to Boston and met Steven, and it's the first and only time I ever left an interview and I said, I'm going to get this job. 10 days later, I was shooting a commercial in Virginia, and I got the call. But you got to understand, nobody knew what this movie was going to be. I mean, during the filming, they thought they were going to pull the plug. We were over budget, over time. We were there in the middle of the summer when they were supposed to be gone. And I ran a summer theater there. I starred in it. I played all the best young men's roles. I hired directors who knew us and would hire us all winter. It was great.
Wait, so what about the meeting with Steven made you say, "Oh, I got this part"? What was so significant?
I just felt like, in some of those job interviews or whatever you guys call it, you just go in and sometimes you have such a vibe that you think, whoa, this could be mine. And I did. I don't know why. Believe me, I had a long career after that, and I never felt the same way quite that I had in that meeting.
What was it about Steven that you saw and observed that made not only that movie, but made his entire filmography so legendary?
He was very real. There was no pretensions. I didn't read. There was no script. There were no lines really to read then. And we just talked about myself and the island. And he was very kind. And years and years later, when I was partnered with David Kelly and we had won all these awards, and David couldn't go to the Writers Guild to accept a Writers Guild award and asked me if I would accept it. And Steven was presenting it. And so 600 people there, and I'm feeling so proud. And I get up and I accept it for David. And he goes, "Oh, Jeff, oh, Jerry," he says, "I'm proud of you." And I thought, oh, fuck. He called me Jerry. You can't correct him in front of everybody. It looks like I thought, I'll save this. I didn't know I was going to save it for a podcast, but I thought I'd save it for the Tonight Show, but that didn't happen.
Well, hey, instead of talking to Johnny Carson, you get to talk to Jeff.
Oh, boy. I had Johnny Carson pictures in behind Jeff. I get it.
Yes, of course. I love Johnny. Now, when you talk about being an actor in New York, where did this really first start for you? Why was acting the pathway for Mr. Jeffrey Kramer?
Oh, when I was a young guy, my mother took me to see Mary Martin in Peter Pan on Broadway. I was a kid, and we were sitting in the first row of the balcony. She said, "Jeffrey, you almost fell out of the balcony." I never wanted to grow up. I always wanted to be in front of people and do this. And only years later did I realize that we were the last hired and the first fired. Was having 3 children. And as we started to have children, I was selling flowers on the corner of Fairfax and Pico for Didi Khan's husband at the time. And I'm have my hat down so my agent wouldn't come by and see me. And I thought, I want to change my life. And luckily the stars were aligned because, there's no facts here. It's all opinions forcibly argued. And if you can do that with enough belief and confidence, you can do that. People go, you say, no, no, boom, bada, boom, bada, boom. That's funny. And they go, oh, yeah. Yeah. So it just, God was good.
Jeff?
That's amazing. Now, you were talking about when you're traveling and the airplanes being petri dishes, but you do travel a lot also because you go to a lot of conventions and meet a lot of fans. And I know that, of course, they ask you about Jaws and Jaws 2. Do you find that over the years, Clue is starting to become more of a topic when they approach you?
Well, you know what it turns out? It turns out that Clue is a babysitter picture. They put it on when they want to go out and they know it's okay. Or, even the violence is fun. And, it just turned out that way. But at the beginning, no one ever asked for a Clue picture. And now, thanks to you, they really have. I'm telling you, I think you brought Clue to the forefront in a way that certainly no one has before.
Well, yeah.
And we were babies. Deborah Hill, I loved her. She was my dear friend. And Jonathan, I think it was his first picture, I think.
Yeah, it was.
And we were babies.
So how did it so I know you had a relationship with Deborah Hill, I believe. Y'all knew one another. That's how you came upon doing
That's how, and she said, I have something you might be right for. And boom. Because Halloween 2, I knew the director, Rick Rosenthal, and he brought me in. Who knew that I could earn more money signing? The idea that anyone would pay me for a picture is stunning. But who am I to complain? And who knew that this was an industry? I had no idea. And you know what? You find out about movies like Clue and horror movies. It's hereditary. It's passed down. Parents to their kids pass it on to their kids. That love of those older movies, the horror movies, the whatever. And somehow Jaws is, I guess, a horror movie in many people's heads. I mean, Dreyfuss is the godfather was the godfather to one of my kids.
Wow.
Richard.
Oh, yes.
Wow,
oh, boy. And we met on Jaws. So, it's a long time.
Yeah.
And I know, I'm sorry, Brad. I was just going to ask real quick because we'll get back to Clue, of course. But I'm also a fan of the Halloween films as well. And I know you just a few months ago were part of Halloween 45.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a huge convention where the cast from the entire franchise got together in Pasadena where it was filmed. Tell us about that. That's amazing.
That was so much fun. I mean, you said if you blink in Clue, you'd miss me. In Halloween 2, that's even worse for me.
And you're sharing the screen with Donald Pleasance.
But what a lovely professional he was. And I must say, I brush my teeth better now. For sure.
You were a dentist, yeah.
Yeah. The coroner's dentist.
That's right.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. The horror movie fans are definitely some of the most devoted. So I'm sure they...
Big time. I mean, you find your spirit resurrected when you go to these things, because they really love these movies and they love these characters. And, if you ask me, it's all about character. And certainly in television where I ended up, the stories didn't matter in many ways. You went back week after week because you liked the character and you rooted for them. You knew what they were going to do. You go back week after week just to see them do it. I tell young writers this, and I have a couple projects we're going to take out, but I'm thinking of actually doing a producing podcast and maybe even making it free for a while, because I'm new at this. I'll figure it out. But you know what? There's a lot of time I could help with people. Save them time. Everybody's got good ideas, but they're not often necessarily correct for a TV series. You got to think about what is going to happen in the first year, second year, third year. What characters are going to cross paths here. We once did a crossover from Ally McBeal and The Practice, which we had the stars of both. Planning like a major military battle. I'm serious.
In what way?
They were different. They were different networks. Oh, the Johnny Carson pictures behind you. I thought it was. Yeah, Jeff, I got it. But it was unbelievable. It was so much, and you need to think about that when you want to do a project. You have to think it out. You have to think about how you tell a story, who the characters are you're going to build it around, because it's all about character, certainly in television, I believe.
I mean, they create show Bibles, correct? Like, isn't that what they refer to them as, where you're going to have map out all the episodes?
Well, yes. And, now when you develop, you really have to have an idea where you want to go with it, what you want to do with it. Sometimes David Kelly ruined us because it was all in his head, and he could write an episode in 2 days. It was brilliant. And nice man. Good guy.
I would definitely love to hear a podcast about that.
I mean, one year we won Best Comedy, Best Drama at the Emmys in the same year. I had my kids with me, my mom. It was great.
Now, when you talk about doing these conventions, how many of these do you do a year about?
Well, last year I did about 4 or 5. This year, I don't have another one for the rest of my life at the moment.
I'm sure something will come up.
Yeah.
It is not a revenue stream that one can count on.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I don't know. No one's invited me to one yet, so I can't.
Have you never gone to one of them?
No, I certainly have gone. I've been to. I went to a Fangoria one that certainly was horror themed, and Robert Englund was the big draw to that. And I should have gone to the Halloween one. I wanted to go to
the Walking Dead. Got
pretty amazing.
A ton of stuff, and Greg Nicotero does them.
Yeah.
He's a lovely man.
Well, your buddy Christopher Lloyd certainly spends a lot of time on the road doing.
Oh boy, I haven't seen him in a long time, but we used to drink together. Yeah, he's a good, nice guy. I haven't seen him in 40 plus years, I'll bet.
Wow. So were y'all hanging out on the set of Clue, or how did y'all get together?
No, we used to hang out at the Improvisation in L.A.
Oh wow,
the Improv. Yeah, the old Improv. Bud Friedman. All the comics. It was a great hangout.
And so you and Chris would just kind of be frequenters there?
We'd be there, yeah. And sometimes we'd invite the bar back home at closing time,
Just hanging out. He's such an enigmatic actor, Chris Lloyd. I mean, just kind of unique in his own right. And when you saw him on set of Clue, even though, like you said, your character and his kind of had different pathways there, but did y'all have a kind of a rekindling?
Well, it was always nice to say hello. He was brilliant as the Reverend Jim on Taxi and all that stuff. But I hadn't seen him. He moved up to Santa Barbara, I think, and I hadn't seen him in many, many, many decades.
Now,
sounds like I'm Methuselah here. All right, I lie about my age every day except to get my jabs.
Now, when talking about Clue, so as you notice, we definitely spent a little bit more time dissecting this movie than the average person.
Than healthy people should.
But we figured out a lot about The Motorist, including that the motorist was a married man, had a wedding band on his wrist, was probably calling his wife when he picked up the phone. We weren't sure if The Motorist had something to do with Mr. Body and he was an accomplice. We're not sure. But from your perspective, playing The Motorist, when you read it and got to do it, what was your feel of the character?
Well, I was so glad to be in it. And, when you come in and you say couple lines and then die, I didn't spend a lot of time with backstory. I mean, and they give you hints because you see that picture of Colonel Mustard. So obviously I knew him from those days. And I thought that was a great little cinematic MacGuffin.
Oh, I love the fact that there's the picture of the two of you all together. I've tried to figure out, is that something you do the day of? Like, where do they set that up? The picture of you and
No.
Mustard.
I had done that. Maybe I'd done it a different day, I think. I came in for a still shot. It was just, you plant that and it just adds layers to the possibilities. That's the beauty of movies too and stuff. You can layer in things and people do it with character. A lot of actors do. You guess, what is that backstory? Why does he act that way? And it just adds layers of depth and makes it multidimensional, I think.
And it makes it great for rewatchability, because that picture is not something I saw the first 5 times I watched the movie,
No.
But it's so interesting to listen to you guys and you rewatch and you see things many, many times. When I changed my life and went over to the other side, it was at a time when the Fox network was brand new and television was different. You could walk upstairs to your cousins. We did South Central. I worked in The Simpsons a little bit. I developed the X-Files. I mean, it was such an exciting time. And I just lost my train of thought. I was going to tell you why. And we were just talking about what?
Just the rewatching of Clue and noticing things.
And at that time, which is 30 plus years ago, you couldn't repeat anything on television for 6 months for fear of hurting your audience growth. Boy, how off base was that? I mean, really, you think about that. They would not air a repeat for 6 months after it initially aired because they thought it would hurt the growth of an audience. It's crazy.
Yeah, what's the thinking behind that?
There was no thinking. It was a given, I think. It was that TV mentality, TV talk. When I got into development, when they'd say, "Oh, you can't do that," it just made me want to do that in subject matter, in territory, and nobody had seen anything like Ally McBeal. The practice. We really went, and a friend of David Kelly's, it was based on, who was a defense attorney in Boston, and sometimes the guilty walked, and you'd see DAs going 3, no, 2. All right, 2 years, boom. And they'd sentence you to 2 years. I mean, that's sometimes how it happened. It was kind of really an eye-opener, and we cast our shows really well, so it was excellent.
It seems like back then, to go back to the thinking of not the repeatability, maybe was more for movies than for TV. I think whoever made that decision thought TV is kind of in one year out the other, and it's not. That's why they would have previously on to remind everybody, because they just assumed everybody forgot it. And now that's an option to skip when you're watching watching 8 episodes in a day, because
in those days we made 22 episodes.
Yeah,
and before that, Generation 4 made 39 a year. You know what? It's not good for marriages. You could always tell the state of a showrunner's marriage by how late they kept the writers in the room.
Oh,
I'm serious. I know
that makes sense. That makes
sounds
sense.
like a joke, but some guys didn't want to go home.
How I'm just curious on for development and having the writers' room and stuff, because now shows are 10 episodes is kind of like what the new
eight is the new 10.
10, and then
eight is the new 10. Yeah,
I remember the 22 episodes of Seinfeld or The Nanny or whatever it was at the time, the sitcoms. How big did that affect the industry, kind of sizing down the seasons?
Well, I think after a while, the unions loved that kind of stuff. It gave there was a thought that perhaps they'd order more in different series, which is not necessarily true, because TV imitation, they say, means greatness, but not for the imitated, for the imitator. I mean, the imitated, because people imitate other shows, but it's really the original that kind of had the viewerships and the good writing, the characters, it was the imitated that really won out. Or the imitators were all over the networks, and they still are on the streamers.
I think back to X-Files, how many X-Files imitators came out after that now are like long gone. The people have totally forgotten.
It was the simplest of all, it was a believer and a non-believer, an unexplained phenomenon. And David Coveney, I had done a half hour the year before. We never got it made, but a woman named Dinah Kirgo wrote a script, and he was an Avon lady. And he's having more sex, making more money than any of the women. And it was so much fun. And I got to know David. And then Jillian had only just come out of drama school. She had no credits. I ran into her at a bar several years ago. She was with Peter, the guy who created the Crown. And I said hi and reminded her that I was in the room. And she goes, "Oh, Peter, he was in the room. He was in the room," when she got cast. I remember she had no quotes. And she's done very well for herself. She just came out of drama school.
So did you have more fun being in front of the camera or working behind it?
I love being in front of the camera, but it was like this, up and down. And I was having my third child, and I thought, oh my gosh, unless you hit it, you walk in a room and they go, well, he's not a star. And you think, there's an aura about it. And I thought, I've always wanted to produce. I produced at the Summer Theater in the Martha's Vineyard. And then the true story was I had a friend, and our kids went to preschool, and they were looking for a new executive at Fox Studios, television studios. And my wife said, "Whoa, this might be good." And I thought, well, because they wanted to interview me. And she got, unbeknownst to me, Dreyfuss came over to the house and he said, "If you don't do this, I will fucking kill you."
Oh, okay.
And I thought, whoa.
That's a good Dreyfuss, by the way.
So I went in and I met Barry Diller. I met John Dolgen, who was yelling at a guy. I'm sitting on his desk, and there's a jar of Maalox on the desk, and he's screaming at a guy. And I thought, what am I doing here? And they hired me. And boy, it was great, because when I tell you there are no facts here, it's only opinions forcibly argued. Actors have great opinions. One of my old friends, who was starving actors, he was the bartender at the Improv, is Leslie Moonves, who made a great leap into that realm, and it was all good.
Yeah, ran CBS, I believe, for a while. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for years.
Now, so getting Clue, again, to go back to it for a minute, you're on the
Wait, can I ask you guys a question? How did you guys get together?
So I saw Jeff was doing a documentary about it. I do radio and TV here in Houston, so I wanted to interview him.
Oh, you're in Houston. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm in Houston, Texas. I'm an Astros fan. I would have worn my cap for you, but I don't want to cause it too much trouble.
No.
But, I reached out to him to be on my show to talk about Clue, his documentary, and we hit it off. And then we said, why don't we do this crazy idea of doing a minute-by-minute Clue thing? And
I had no idea what that meant or what kind of commitment that was going to be. So I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do that.
But they do that on other shows now, too, on Santa Claus, the movie.
Yeah.
Jaws, I get it.
Yeah. But you know what? It's been really fun because you get to see and think about the movie in a completely different way. And we've had a few revelations where we're like, whoa, wait a minute. We never even thought about this before, especially with The Motorist. The Motorist has been really fun to think about.
They should have spun me off. I could have solved crimes.
You could have been.
I don't think the motorist was really dead. I think he was just plain dead sitting there while everybody else was, pretending to have their little scenario in front of the cop. I think he's still alive. We did discover something on the podcast in one of the original scripts, and I'm curious to see if they filmed it. The actual car accident that the motorist had to lead him to the house. Do you remember filming?
Never. No, I don't.
You didn't film it. Okay. Yeah, there was a whole scene in the script where a cat jumped out into the road, and
we did this all in interiors and on a soundstage at Paramount.
That's why it's so weird to read that. It stands out in not necessarily. It's so unnecessary. I think the reveal of you ducking, about to get pummeled by the key from Tim Curry, is way better than. And it does lead to speculation of what's the motorist been doing all this time, because we also have theories that he dropped off Mr. Body at the house, is just kind of circling around, waiting to pick him up when it's over. Finds out that Mr. Body's not coming back, and I guess I better go up to the door and see what's happening. And then
that's the beauty of not answering all those questions.
Right?
It's such great fodder for guys like you and others to chew on and debate. It's fabulous.
And now, when the movie was finished and you started and you got to see it at a screening or wherever you first saw the film, and at the time it wasn't a box office hit by any stretch of the imagination. It was it did all right, but it's grown legs since then. But when you saw it, were you like, man, this was great. This is a great movie.
Well, I loved it. I was sorry my part wasn't bigger, but part of it was the gimmick. I think that they tried to sell it on with all the different endings, because to me, when you can see different endings and make your choice, it's not the same as watching a movie. It took some of the special onus off of it for me. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
No, I know what you're saying. Kind of like, hey, if the ending of the movie is different depending on which theater I go into, does the lead up really matter that much?
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right. You said it better.
Yeah. There's a lot of scenes where there are certain characters that are missing because in one ending that means something. But in the other, there's a whole scene where everybody's standing around talking and Tim Curry's character just is gone. And it ends up meaning nothing. It's just weird that he's gone.
In studio speak, it makes me think that they didn't know what they had and they were afraid that it might die like that. So they gimmicked it. That would be my thinking. Now, I may be totally wrong, but my gut is pretty good.
Obviously. I think they really leaned as far as the marketing on people and the board game, which is fine because it was it's not just the game anymore was the tagline, and the endings were because if you play the game, you never know who's going to be. But I know a lot of people that have seen the movie, that love the movie, and have never played the board game before.
For sure.
And you don't need to. It's a great spoof of Agatha Christie and those kind of movies that you don't need to know the game.
They should send you guys money because I think you renewed interest in this movie.
Well, I definitely think that Jeff did, and I agree with you, Mr. Kramer, regarding that, because the documentary kind of re-sparked my love for the film. Let me ask you this. When you got an email or a phone call about, hey, they're doing a documentary on Clue, were you like, what?
I was surprised. But
his version, your version, sorry, Jeff, your version is different than everybody else's, because I got to meet you because you were friends with, oh my gosh, I forget his name, but the kid, Dashel.
Dash Myhawk.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dear friend. And you know how we know each other? Through Tourette syndrome.
Okay.
Dash has massive Tourette. I didn't realize I had it until my kids were diagnosed as youngsters. And we just became great friends, lifelong friends. Still I am. He's just the best. I just tried to sponsor him to get him into the Motion Picture Academy.
Oh, he's amazing.
But you know what? You never know what friendships come out of these films and these things and lives. But you were lovingly persistent. You were really good. You always had a sense of humor, and I thought, I like this guy. I'll do it. So I didn't hesitate on this one. Sure.
We went to your office on the lot. It was great.
Yeah, I had that little bungalow. It was great. I miss it.
That was.
They closed it down, and then during the pandemic, they closed it all down, and then they sold the lot to a private equity company.
Oh man, yeah. Hey, I guess that's the way sometimes it happens. But I agree with you. I think Jeff doing the documentary did raise awareness for the film.
Oh, big time.
In a whole different way, and people, to this day, I mean, there's always been the iconic things from the movie, like the flames on the side of my face has been like an internet thing for a long time. But I think that, nowadays more people are aware of Clue than they were when it was first released. It's like one of those cult films.
And the things like today, doing this podcast with you makes you think deeper about any movie that you've seen that means something to you. I mean, it's almost like if you went to a book club in a way, but you have the capacity to reach many more. I'm new somewhat to podcasts. I, would listen to music if I took a bath or whatever and all of that stuff. But now you can really chew on the material and go deeper and see what works, see what didn't work for you. I mean, there's as much to learn from what doesn't work as what does.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that, and this is something that I've emailed Mr. Kramer about for another documentary I want to work on.
You can call me Jeffrey. Mr. Kramer
Jeff, sorry. Okay. Anyway, Jeffrey. It's weird because that's my name too. Except when I hear Jeffrey, it's usually a bad thing.
And they say it, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey sounds
Jeffrey.
Trigger. But the thought of, and I noticed this when it happened with Clue, but it certainly with other movies and to some degree, I mean, you're perfect for this, Jeff, because you've got Jaws and Santa Claus and Halloween as well. That I think there's something about this Generation X or whatever, that is my age, that because we had home video and we had cable TV, we were able to watch these movies. I'm talking about babysitter pictures. Everybody has a different babysitter picture, and it could be Halloween too. And those are the people that had come to the convention. But I think they have this connection in a way that before was, you heard it more with books because you could reread the book and same,
for sure.
Albums, you can listen to the same album again and again. And then with that kind of thing with movies, now these are the people that have rooms devoted to their Jaws collection, or they have tattoos, or they introduce it to their kids. And now Jaws is 1975, so
50 years.
Grandkids will be watching it.
Social media allows you to chew on projects deeper and enjoy them in ways that you never thought were possible, because bouncing these loves of certain movies or even types of movies around similar like-minded souls is really enormously satisfying and smart, I think. And it's the plus side of social media, I think.
Well, yes, I agree with you. There's a big plus to it, and sometimes there's a few, things about social media that's not the best. But you're right, and being able to rewatch, because like to me, Clue or Back to the Future or whatever the movie is a comfort picture, right? Put that on, no matter what, I'm gonna enjoy it. For you, what's the movie you like to sit down and rewatch? Like if you just like, oh, I'm just gonna rewatch this. Movie.
I'm not a big rewatcher. I just have never been. I'm always into what's next and new and seeing the work that other people are doing. I mean, I will occasionally rewatch some episodes, but I don't really rewatch much of anything. I mean, maybe It's a Wonderful Life once a year, or Santa Claus the movie, or my old friend John Lithgow. It was just lovely. It's who you never know. But I'm not a rewatcher. Not like you guys.
No. Well, I would hope not.
Your generation has that ability to do so, because you're absolutely right. You had, home video. Now you got streamers, and you spend a lot more money now, don't you, on television than you ever did.
Way more.
Because I get it. And that strikes almost killed us, and yet, now you're gonna almost lose by winning. There's going to be a lot more money, but there'll be a lot fewer jobs, I think, unfortunately. But it is what it is. It's that consolidation. There'll be a few fewer streamers down the line anyway.
Yeah, you're seeing they're slowly kind of talking about merging together, and
Well, and one of the reasons I want to do this producing podcast in school kind of is the idea that we need to marry the generations. We need, there's, they got people look at me and say, oh, he's old. He's not funny anymore. He doesn't do this. Horse shit. It's not true. But teaming.
No one says that, by the way.
Yeah, nobody.
No one says that, but I know.
With someone younger and having a partnership is really kind of interesting, because you bring experience to the table, and there's something to be said about that. I learned how you horse trade when a network comes to you and says, no, you can't do that. We need you to do this and do that. And you say, well, can't do that. But, maybe I could do this. And boom, you find your way through. They still have their own points of view. Many of them have never, ever fucking done this before in their lives.
Right.
And think they know what to do. And, somebody said to me, you're going to make more hits? And I said, if we knew how to make hits, we'd keep making them. Give me a break.
Let me go make that hit again. I've been sitting here too long. I'll just go make a couple.
Just one more. Of course.
Yeah. I didn't think about that.
The studio used to make overall deals with writers, because television is driven by writing and writer producers. And I used to say, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't buy every one of their shows. You buy every other one. You'd have better odds, and you would, actually.
Well, I want to ask you about producing for television and dealing with the network. How did you take network notes? Were you receptive to network notes, or did you have a way to play them?
I was receptive to them when I thought they made sense, and sometimes they didn't. When I started, this is a true story. I walk into Fox, I meet the head of production, and he says to me, you can't say shit on television. And I thought about it, and I said, well, why? Why can't you say shit on television? He said, because they have enough shit on television. And it was kind of true in a way. And the networks, some of these guys would have ideas of what to do. Many lawyers moved in from legal affairs into giving notes, and And notes, most people didn't understand. They didn't know where you were coming from, where you were going with it, what you were going to tell. And it's, so much of business is personal. People, I'd sit in casting rooms, and if somebody reminded them of a cousin they didn't like that actor. And that's not right. It's not fair. It's bullshit. And it's highly subjective. But it is, the process is highly subjective. And you've got to trust the brains and the talent that you put your show in the hands of and the brains of.
But
you just have to do it.
Did you have to battle the network at any points, like during the shows, of saying, like, I really feel strongly about this actor or this story?
You bet. And, luckily I had a 1,000-pound gorilla in David Kelly, but David Kelly didn't take the notes. I would take them, see what we could do and what I thought we couldn't do, and then take it to David, and he would help. He would decide what we really are going to do and not. And David Kelly was such an upright guy, was that, we'd have tone meetings before every production where we go through, all the departments would be there, props, everything, grip, set, and you talk about what you want. And the director, you try to tone. I don't want this guy to lose his shit in this scene. He should contain it. He should do this. So we weren't surprised. But when we were, and the director hadn't listened or whatever, we would go back and reshoot it, and often at our own expense, and David's expense, really.
Wow.
And which not many people ever do that. And my hat's off to him. He was something else.
That's crazy.
You could shoot these. We had 2 stenographers who would, because he's a lefty like me, and he would write longhand on yellow legal pads, and he'd write in chicken scroll. Not many people could decipher it. We had 2 people who would do it and type it up. And it was such a creative time. I mean, I'm telling you, one year we went from The Practice, and Ally McBeal will run both. Best comedy, best drama. Nobody's ever done that since. And it's David's award. That's really hats off to him.
But it shows how you care. And it kind of ties back to what you were saying before, the whole tone of the show as a whole, how it all has to make sense as a complete, thing. It's kind of like knowing where the show is going. Because I can think of a few shows that you could tell they didn't know where they were going. And by the time you get to the end, you're like, what? I go, oh no, that was the plan all along. No, I don't think so.
Have you seen this show Expats on
Expats?
Max?
No.
I know what you're talking about. I haven't watched it yet.
I started to watch it, and I ended up watching the whole thing, but it went so off the rails. It was never, nothing was tied together at the end. It was almost like they said, all right, we're pulling the plug. I have no idea, but there may be a story in that, of what happens. It was just crazy.
Yeah, and that just tells you, though, the importance of a showrunner or executive producers to be able to see everything through, right?
Well, you bet. And to pass back and to hand it around and encourage the people who work for you to think creatively and imaginatively and give them some leeway in what they do. It's so interesting. We're approaching the 50th anniversary of Jaws. Somebody said, wow, 50. How old were you when you shot Jaws? He said, I was 9. I mean, give me a break. So I wrote a letter to Steven Spielberg, because then he was Steven. Now he's Spielberg. And I wrote him a letter, and I know a guy who co-runs his television arm, Justin Falvey. He's a lovely guy. And his wife, Sammy Falvey, worked on she was at Fox then. She then ended up running ABC Comedy, but I knew her. And he gave it to Steven, and they said, come on in. We'd love you to help do this with Laurent Bouzereau, who's Steven's go-to documentarian and just wrote a big, beautiful book on Spielberg the first 10 years, and Wendy Benchley, who really believes in shark conservation. It turns out that Stephen had really felt terrible in that people were going out and killing sharks afterwards. And I didn't know this at the time, but I get it, because they, Shark Week and they do it on the vineyard, and it was just crazy. And they bring in these sharks, and it was just really, it decimated part of shark populations around the world. And I get it. It was scary enough just watching this movie, because that ocean is like the primordial ooze, and we don't know what's down there and all of that. But we're going to do hopefully a good documentary on the 50th, because I have a little granddaughter who sings Baby Shark, Baby Shark. Very cool. And I can't think of many other movies that have affected our culture quite the way this is. People come to these signing things with little babies on their shoulders. They're 3 years old. I said, well, they haven't seen it. They go, oh, no, he's seen it many times. They go, I should call social services on you. How dare you? Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a movie that, it was considered the first blockbuster of it ever. And it changed the way that filmmaking was done. It changed, like you said, the culture around it changed
how
everything.
They marketed films, and you bet. We used to have a friend who was an usher who would let us into the theater every night when Ben Gardner's head comes out of the boat. You actually saw sodas, popcorn go up in the air. The whole audience rears back. It was fabulous.
Yeah, one of just, because I know a little bit about the making of the film, and just one of the great cinematic stories of all time, to where it seemed like it was going to be a train wreck and turned out to be an iconic film.
Exactly right. Nothing went right, and in a way, it was a perfect creative storm. Everything came together, and a lot of it had to do, I think, with Verna Fields, who was, they used to call her the mother cutter. She was warm and loving and wonderful human being, and so talented and encouraging of all of us youngsters then. I say, because we were all babes in arms then. We were babies. And it really came together in a way that I can't think of another project that quite came together. It's every element of it worked. The John Williams score, gosh. It was just stunning.
And it's a great illustration of how constraint can breed creativity, right? Because
slow burn.
And you know what? Today, if you remade it, they'd want more shark, bigger shark, got to do more. What really worked was the shark didn't work. You couldn't film it. You had to rely on character, and build that, that Roy Scheider look to the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always, and he shot it at sea level, and what a difference it made. It made you part of this, as if you were the swimmer almost. It was brilliant.
Brilliant. That movie's brilliant. Of course, Clue the movie is brilliant. We want to be respectful of your time, Jeffrey. But
you haven't seen Hollywood Boulevard, huh?
Joe Dante.
Oh, boy.
Jeff.
Absolutely.
Commander Cody sings the theme song, Truckin' and Fuckin'. It was unbelievable. It took place at Miracle Pictures. They made a picture a week. If it was a good picture, it was a miracle.
Aptly named.
Well, we look forward to, if you do this producing podcast. That sounds like a great thing. What else can we look forward to from the world of Jeffrey Kramer?
Well, I got a project I'm going to play around with Greg Nicotero. And who knows? I mean, I'm not out there with a lot of things. So many producers who I know, the more stuff they threw against the wall, they felt the more that would stick. I was never like that. I just think you got to find your own passion into what you're doing, and that will make it work. I think passion is Barry Diller, for all of who he is, he told me that if you didn't fight for what you believed in, it was never going to happen. And it never does. It's that kind of passion for what you need to do that moves the needle.
Yeah, when you're 100% about something, you speak up 100% of the time.
You've got to. You have to. It's how things get made.
Yeah, somebody believing the idea and seeing it through. And you know what?
Boy.
You know what? I mean, look, it's also the way that we have a movie like Clue that we get to enjoy all these years later and pontificate on all the possibilities of Jeffrey Kramer and The Motorist.
Yeah, and that floor was hard in that sitting room.
Wasn't fun, right? That was not a fun shoot, huh?
I would have loved to have lived.
Made it to the end, right?
Oh, yeah, you bet. Tim Curry, nice man.
Oh,
I had met him
talent.
years before with an old friend, with Brooke Adams, who was friendly with him forever, an old friend.
Yeah, how much of the cast did you know?
Well, I knew him. I had met, oh, God, the name just her. She was the maid.
Colleen Camp.
Colleen, yeah. Looked very different then. Oh, come on. The one who was married to John Peters. I see her around town.
Leslie Ann Warren. Yeah.
Leslie Ann Warren, yeah.
Yeah.
But everybody was kind and loving and warm and wonderful. I mean, it's not like I worked a week on this, much less, maybe 2 days. But it was so much fun. And it was just, and in those days, I was glad to have the job. I needed the job. I really did. We had no money. I just needed that job. Who knew? You never know how things will turn out.
You never know.
The truth.
You never know. And all these years later, here you are talking to a couple knuckleheads about it. And
please, I used to play the leader of Fonzie's old gang.
Yeah, you did.
Happy days. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you just never know. You know what? I never thought I'd be sitting here talking to you, and it's been an absolute pleasure and delight. And
this has been one of the best I've ever done. You guys were great. Thank you.
Oh, we really appreciate it. Mr. Jeffrey Kramer, the one and only, The Motorist, here on Clue the Movie Podcast. We appreciate it so much, man.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.